what we're going over is the day one constructions. And I'm going to use the regular compass first. Place the compass on the end of the line on point J. So that means the metal tip, that means the tip that doesn't draw is going on J. Adjust the compass width to the other end of the line on point K. So that means I open it until it's open the amount of point K. So the width of the opening is the same as the width of that segment. Without changing, this is step 3, without changing the compass width, move the compass to point C. Draw an arc near the end of where the new end of the new line will be. Okay, so there's an arc. Pick a point on the arc. Any point on the arc is fine. To be the end of the new line, call it D. And then draw a straight line between C and D. One of the reasons I kind of like the safety compasses so much is because they are a compass and a straight edge in one. Those are the two tools you always use for a construction, is a compass and a straight edge, and that's it. Okay, notice my segment's not parallel to JK. It doesn't have to be parallel. It just has to be congruent. And this is how I make it congruent. Every single point on this arc, I could have picked any point over here, is that same distance away from C that K is from J, because we opened our compass that much. Okay, so if I did this with a safety compass, let's see if I have another one I can use. I'm just gonna do it on freehand real quick. If I did it with a safety compass, let me just draw my segment. And I'm going to call that JK. And I have point C. Here's how that would look. Instead of opening it the distance, what you have to do is you have to put the hole in the middle of the white circle on top of one end. And then you have to find a hole over here that is right on top of K, or as close as you can possibly get it. So I think that's going to be the hole that I use. Then you have to keep track of that hole and make sure you remember what hole it is as you move your center down on top of C. And I forgot. So it can be very easy to forget this. Okay, it was the hole right there. It's right in between where it says 1 and 2. Okay. And then right in between 1 and 2, it was that hole. I draw an arc, and every point on that arc is the same distance away from C that K is from J. So I pick any point on that arc, call it D, and then I can complete my segment. So I have copied a segment in terms of its length. It's exactly the same length. Okay, next one is copying an angle. Okay, construct an angle with ray MN that's congruent to the angle QRS. The most important thing to know on this one is when you're drawing arcs, the only reason the points Q and S are here are to name the angle. When you draw your arcs, you don't have to go through points Q or S at all. So the first thing it says, place the compass on point R and adjust to any width and draw an arc that crosses both sides of the angle, creating 2 new points. Okay, so that's putting my compass tip on there. The center of this, the center of the white circle is just like the tip of the compass. Okay, so I'm going to put the center of the white circle there, and then I'm going to pick any point as long as my arc will go across both sides. There we go. Okay, notice it doesn't go through Q or S. You know what? I just moved it when I should have paid attention. There we go. Draw an arc across both sides. Move the compass to point M, which is down here, and draw an arc crossing MN. It really should be the same size arc. That's the key thing they didn't point out. So I have to remember which hole I used up here. It was this one. And come down here and use the same hole. Okay. When this one crossed, I made points A and B. A and B. And then I've crossed MN, and I'm calling that point C according to this. Then set the compass on A and set its width to B. That means set it so that your opening is that big. So like if I was doing that with a traditional compass, that would mean like move this so that it's open that amount. With this, I have to find a hole that is that far. There it is. If one hole is on A, the other hole needs to be on B. So I'm going to use that really close hole right there. Okay. And then come put that on C. This is step 5. And draw an arc with that hole that crosses your first arc. And the last step you have to do is look at where they intersect and connect that point back to M. So there's my copy. That's their point D. Okay, so let's do that with the regular compass now. And if you want to, you don't have to do the one that's on this paper. Like, especially if you can't print at home, you're just going to draw an angle, and then you're going to copy it. So don't forget to use a straight edge when you draw your angle, but it could be any size. And then the construction is the part where you copy it. And notice that this one started with the bottom of the angle in place. So I'm going to go ahead and put the bottom of my new angle. And then I'm ready to do the copy. Okay, so I'm going to do it this time with the other type of compass. It doesn't matter how much this is open this time, as long as it's open wide enough to cross both sides of the angle. And remember that it can be easier to move the paper than the compass sometimes. And then I pick up the compass, don't change the opening, and I come over here and I make the same size arc. You don't want it to wiggle or readjust as you're doing that. So you're being kind of slow and careful. And notice I'm holding it on the side that does not write. I'm not holding it at the top, and I'm not holding it over here. Okay, so that's the first part. And then I come up here and I adjust this to where they're at the opening. Okay, and I'm going to keep it that open, that amount, and come over here and make an arc that distance. And now I just have to connect that point of intersection back to the vertex of my new angle. And that is my angle. And so I've successfully copied the first angle. Okay. If you're in here right now, if you don't have a compass, I can give you the same compass. There's somebody here that doesn't have one. This is your. Okay, so questions on those two? Do you need me to go back through either one of those? Or are you more interested in the perpendicular bisector and the angle bisector? You don't need your phone for this, folks. I've already said that once. Your phone should go away. Okay, let's go ahead and do a perpendicular bisector. And I'm going to draw it freehand just so you can see. This is if you are at home and you can't print, this is what you do to start number 3, is you draw a segment. Okay? So now what's going to happen, it says, place the compass on point M. That basically just means on one endpoint. This is where the M was on the picture, and there's the N. So you're going to put your compass tip, which is the center of the circle, if you're not using this kind of compass. If you're using this kind, is the point that doesn't write. Okay, you're going to put that on one end. Now, when it says adjust it to just over half the line length, that means pick a hole that is a little bit more than halfway across. So I'm going to pick a hole here. The goal there, let me just remind you of what the finished product looks like. You're going to have two arcs and they have to cross each other. If you don't make it far enough out across the segment, they won't cross each other. It'll look like this. Okay, so you have to make the arc far enough away from the end point of the segment so that they cross each other twice. So I'm going to make an arc. Let's do it over here. I do the whole arc almost like a semicircle. Okay, on that animation, they just do it up here and then they come down here and draw it down here. It's the same thing. Now I have to remember which hole I used if I'm using this type of compass. There's the hole I used. I'm going to try and keep it on there. And I move it over to the other side. And I use the same hole. And I draw an arc that crisscrosses the first arc. But those are exactly the same size. And so what that does is it gives me 2 points of intersection, both of which are the same distance away from M as they are from N. That's what doing the same arc does, is every point on that arc is the same distance away from M. So every point in the arc over here would be the same distance that that one was. And the last step is to connect these 2 points of intersection, where my 2 arcs intersect. And that's my perpendicular bisector. So that segment is the perpendicular bisector. It's like perpendicular and a bisector. You can mark it like that if you want to show it's the perpendicular bisector. It's also a way to get the midpoint, because this point right here would be the midpoint of segment MN. Wherever it crosses your segment is the midpoint. Let me point out that when you do constructions, you don't erase. Like, all we really want here, what we're constructing, is this guy. We're constructing this actual segment. And sometimes, knowing that, I have students who will be like, oh, okay, that's what I actually want, so I don't need these arcs, I'll erase them. Don't ever erase your arcs. The markings you do along the way in a construction are part of the final product. Okay, I should see them, and therefore I can tell that they're in the right place and they worked out the right way. Okay, so yours should look almost exactly like this. Let me do one. That was with the safety compass. Let's do this one with the regular compass. And mine is not great. This is one of the things I talked about. If this wiggles too much open and shut, if it's too easy to open and shut, then it's going to wiggle as you're trying to draw an arc, and that can be a problem. Okay, so I'm drawing an arc. And then without moving the compass, I'm going to change the tip over to the other side of the segment and draw the same arc, or without moving the opening of the compass. So now I have 2 arcs that are the same size. They meet up here and they meet down here. And when I connect those 2 points, I will have my perpendicular bisector. I would not, in general, use a pen to do a construction. I just did that without thinking about it, really. So this segment is your perpendicular bisector. Okay, let me give you some time to work on that if you haven't already while I go check on people in the lab. I'll be right back. I want to walk you through the perpendicular bisector one more time because I'm seeing that a couple people need some help. So let me just do that, okay? So I put this on the end and I draw an arc, and I got to remember which hole I used. Because I needed to remember which hole I used, I went ahead and used that one with the arrows pointing at it because that helps me remember. So after I do one arc, then I pick up the white circle and move it to the other end. So this now goes over here, and the center of the white circle goes over the other end point. And then I'm going to draw another arc that crosses the first one in two places, and I have to use the exact same hole. So I had to remember that this is the hole my pencil was in the first time. You don't draw the line until you have these two arcs, because these two arcs like this is what tells me where to draw my line. Okay? And that's how I draw the line, is I connect the two places where the two arcs cross. So rarely do we draw whole circles. You might in those designs you do later in the week. But a lot of these, you're just drawing parts of circles to know where stuff happens. So that's the perpendicular bisector. Okay, the last one we did on this sheet is the angle bisector. Okay, and here's what that looks like when it's done. Okay, so here's the directions, and they're the same directions as on that website. So you can watch step by step, watch that happen according to these directions. All right, so angle bisector. It says place the compass on the angle's vertex. So that means place the tip here. And then set the compass to any width. So you're about to draw an arc, but it doesn't have to go through A and C. A and C are only there to name the angle. So don't worry about A and C. You could ignore them. It says a little less than C. I disagree. I'm going to make it, well, you could. It doesn't really matter. It honestly does not matter. You're just drawing an arc. Mine happens to go very close to A, but that's a coincidence. All your arc needs to do in that first step is it has to cross both sides of the angle. Because when it crosses each side of the angle, it's making a point. And these 2 points are the same distance away from B. Okay, so we've already done steps 1, 2, and 3. We drew an arc crossing each leg of the angle. Then from where the arc crosses a leg, meaning like this point, make an arc in the angle's interior. That means somewhere in between the two sides. So usually it's out here somewhere. So like I'm going to take, and it doesn't really matter how big the arc is here. So you can move it to where you think it'd be convenient. But what does matter is you're about to make an arc the exact same size from down here. So when you're moving it over here, don't change how much it's open. So I come down here, and then I make the same size arc, and they have to cross. If they don't cross, then I wasn't doing it in a good spot. And I can redo it in a different spot. So usually somewhere out here is a good place to do your first arc. So you do the arc, the first arc, it doesn't matter where it is. I mean, it doesn't matter how big it is. I would put it somewhere out in here. But what matters is keep the arc the same size when you move over here, and then draw an arc so that it crosses the first one. And that gives us a point of intersection. So this was steps 4 and 5, without changing the compass width for the other leg. And then draw a line from B to where the arcs cross. That's the angle bisector when I connect those. And there's my angle bisector. Angle bisector. You don't have to write angle bisector. I'm doing it so you see what part is the sort of the answer. So notice again, we have always use two tools for a construction. You use a compass and a straight edge. If you're using this kind of compass, you've got both of them right there. If you're using this kind of compass, you also need a straight edge. It doesn't need to have centimeters or inches or anything marked on it. It could just be the edge of your academic planner. Those people who have one, these actually work pretty well as a straight edge. Anything that's fairly rigid, make a good straight edge. This thing right here. Okay. An index card can even work, but those are not quite, those are a little bit flexible. One of my favorites for a straight edge is like old gift cards or hotel key cards or stuff like that. They make a really good straight edge. Okay, so that one, did I use which one did I use? I used the regular compass, didn't I? I think so. So let's do it again. Angle bisector, but this time using the safety compass. So I'm going to draw an angle. This is just getting ready for it. So your angle can look like any kind of angle is fine. This is if you don't have one already printed out for you. All right, so I'm going to draw an arc that crosses both sides of this. It doesn't matter how big as long as it crosses both sides. So I'm going to use that little the hole right next to the arrow so that I can keep track of what hole I'm using. Okay, now it crossed both sides, so that gave me 2 points, a point here and a point here. I'm going to go to one of the points and I'm going to draw an arc of any size somewhere out in here. Let's just use that same point, the one right to the left of the arrow, because that way I'll remember when I come over here, move the compass tip, I use the same exact arc, same hole. And then now I've got my 2 arcs that cross, and that's what I connect back to the vertex, and that gives me the angle bisector. And there's my angle bisector. So remember, an angle bisector cuts it into 2 congruent angles, so those would be congruent. Okay. So those are the 4 we did yesterday. Now the ones that are on your assignment for today, there are 5 more, I think. And I'm going to go ahead and, if you have it at home, again, you can just draw it instead of printing it out, but just make sure you use a straight edge so it's a good angle to bisect or whatever. Or use your compass if you're drawing a circle, because the ones today look like this. Okay, you're drawing a perpendicular line through a point. So in other words, there's already a point there, and you're drawing the perpendicular line that goes through that point. Then this is drawing a parallel line through a specific point. So here's a line, and then there's a point that's not on that line, and you're supposed to draw a parallel line through there. You're not just eyeballing it, you got to go through the steps. Then the next 3 are inside a circle. One is making a regular hexagon in a circle. It's kind of easier than you would think. Then there's making an equilateral triangle in a circle. And then the last one is a square inside a circle. Let me give you a hint about number 4. When you do the one that's like a hexagon inside a circle, the steps that it takes you through, what they do is they help you to find, how many sides does a hexagon have? You don't know how many sides a hexagon has? Hexagon has 6. Okay, thank you. Okay, so what it happens is, in the steps of that number 3, it basically helps you find 6 equidistant points going around the outside of the circle, and then you connect them and you have a hexagon. When you get to the next problem, it's doing an equilateral triangle. There's not a video that's specific. Well, there's a link there, so maybe they found a video that's specific to that. But let me just point out the easiest way to do a triangle, if you already know how to do a hexagon, is instead of connecting all the points, you just start skipping. In other words, you start here, skip a point, start here, skip a point, start here. Ta-da, now we got a triangle. Because if these 6 points are equally distanced, then these, pick any other one, every other one, and would be equal distant 3 points. Okay, so that's the easiest way to do the number 4. But so you're going to go ahead and try those. That's basically what you're working on now. And then tomorrow we will go over those together. And then you'll have all the tools you need for on Thursday, me to give you the project, and you can start working on that. Any questions on that? I'm sorry, that was the, yeah, that's right. So make sure you understand this one's day 2. This one is not the same as what we just went over. That was day 1. This is 5 additional ones. So that means you'll then know how to do 9 constructions. And it's okay if you're still learning on some of them. That's not a big deal. Okay. The project I'm going to give you on Thursday, you have until Monday with the project. It's due on Monday and it has to be colored. So be careful with that, because if I learned anything in high school, so I learned a few things, but I'm sure you guys have learned already when you do a project, if it has to be colored, the coloring always takes longer than you think it's going to. Always. Okay, so keep that in mind. You don't want to still be doing the construction part on Monday. You want to just be ready to color it. And also, meanwhile, don't forget the retests. The retest opportunities close at 3:30 after school on Friday afternoon. So make sure that you get any retests done you need to do before that. Anybody have questions before I say goodbye? Okay, hang on. Actually, don't go yet, because I just realized I need to write down who's here. Also, and you can remind me to post this. I did record it so that you could go back to it. If the other videos aren't working for you and you're like, I want to go back to the way we did it in class, especially if you're using a safety compass, because there aren't many videos that use a safety compass. So that might be a little bit learning curve-ish. There might be a bit of a learning curve there. Guys, incidentally, I'm seeing people who are technically listed as face-to-face people in the virtual classroom. And I realize maybe you're on quarantine or something like that, or maybe maybe your parents want you to be digital. Please make sure the school knows. Just make sure your parents have checked in with the school and told them that they want to change you to digital, or if you're quarantining because you knew somebody that was exposed, make sure the school knows that, whatever's going on, because some of the people I'm seeing in virtual land, I don't have any, there's not been any communication from the school that that's where you guys should be. And they let us know generally. So if you have, great, you're good. If you haven't, that's something to take care of. And they'll let you change it. So it's not like I know they're kind of making noise like it's a big commitment and that you're supposed to stay there forever. Yeah. They're not backing that up. So don't worry about, kind of like I have a feeling was going to happen with the, how you're supposed to make a choice for next semester? Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that's not necessarily going to be held really firmly against you. To be quite honest, because they can't. I mean, there's just not a way for someone to tell a parent, we're going to make your child come to school because you said they were going to. Parents can change their minds. So there. Okay, so people I'm not seeing. I didn't see Jordy, Ricardo, Jada. Matthew, Tana, Bradley, Nathaniel. Any of you guys are there, let me know. Okay, y'all can leave. Enjoy doing your constructions, and I'll see you tomorrow. We'll go over them together. But make sure you've tried them before that.